Captain Daeho Kang stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, watching stars blur past the viewport. They had been traveling for 6 months, pushing deeper into space than any human had ever gone. Earth was now just a blue memory, billions of kilometers behind them. "Captain, we're picking up something," said Lieutenant Minho Park, his young face bright with excitement. "It's a ship." "Not one of ours." Daeho felt his heart race. After centuries of wondering if humanity was alone, they finally had an answer. "All stations battle ready, but keep weapons cold. We're here to talk, not fight." The alien ship appeared on their screens. It looked like nothing they had imagined. A massive structure of crystalline shapes that seemed to shift and change as they watched. Dr. Hyejin Nam, their chief scientist, gasped from her station. "They're sending a message," she said, her fingers flying across her console. "Give me a moment to translate." Minutes passed like hours. Finally, Hyejin looked up, her face pale.
"Captain, you need to hear this."
"They're asking us a question. How are you still whole?" "What does that mean?" Daeho asked. "I don't know," Hyejin admitted, "but they sound afraid." Over the next few days, they established communication with the aliens, who called themselves the Velthran Collective. The Velthrons were beings made of silicon instead of carbon, adapted to survive in conditions that would kill humans instantly. They had been exploring the galaxy for thousands of years, but as the conversations continued, something became clear. The Velthrons were shocked that humans existed at all. "You must understand," explained the Velthron ambassador through their translation system. "Your planet should not exist. Your star should have killed you long ago. The mathematics do not allow for your survival." Daeho exchanged glances with Hyejin. "What do you mean?" he asked carefully. The Velthran was silent for a long moment. Then it said, "Come, we will show you." The Eternal Dawn followed the Velthran ship to the nearest star system. What they found there made the entire crew fall silent. Where there should have been planets orbiting a bright star, there was only debris, billions of rocks floating in space, the remains of worlds that had been shattered. "A gamma ray burst hit this system 2,000 years ago," the Velthran explained. "The planets never had a chance. This is the galaxy you live in, humans. This is normal." Over the next 3 months, the Eternal Dawn traveled with the Velthrons to system after system. Each one told the same story. Planets torn apart by asteroids, worlds burned by their own suns, civilizations wiped out by exploding stars. The galaxy was a graveyard. Engineer Ji-won Choi ran the numbers again and again. "Captain," she said one evening, her voice shaking, "according to what we've seen, Earth should have been destroyed at least 20 times in the last billion years. The odds of us surviving this long they're impossible." "Nothing is impossible," Daeho said, but his words sounded hollow even to himself. Hyejin spent every waking hour analyzing data. She barely ate, barely slept. Then one night she burst onto the bridge, her eyes wild with discovery. "I found it," she said breathlessly. "Captain, there's something around our solar system. A field of energy, invisible to normal sensors. It's been there for billions of years." She pulled up her readings on the main screen. There it was, a perfect sphere of energy centered on Earth's sun, extending out for 100 light-years in every direction. "It's a barrier," Hyejin continued. "It's been protecting Earth from everything. Every asteroid, every radiation burst, every cosmic threat. This thing has been stopping them all." "Who built it?" Minho asked. "I don't know," Hyejin admitted. "But there's something else. Something worse." She paused, her hands trembling. "It's failing. The barrier's breaking down. I estimate we have 50 years before it collapses completely." The bridge fell silent. 50 years sounded like a long time, but Daeho knew better. It would take decades just to prepare Earth for what was coming. When they shared this information with the Velthrons, the alien reaction was immediate. They called for a meeting with all the major civilizations in the region. Within weeks, representatives from a dozen species arrived at the designated location. Liaison Bora Yi led the human delegation to the meeting. She was their best diplomat, someone who could read people or aliens better than anyone else. But even she was nervous as they entered the great hall where the galaxy's powers had gathered. The discussion started calmly enough, but they quickly turned heated. Species after species stood up to speak, and their message was always the same. Humanity was dangerous. "You don't understand the galaxy," said a representative of the Akari remnant, a nomadic species that had lost their homeworld long ago. "You grew up in safety, protected from the truth. When the barrier falls, you will panic. You will make mistakes, and those mistakes will affect all of us. Another species agreed. We propose a quarantine. Earth must be isolated until you learn to survive like the rest of us. It may take 1,000 years, but it is the only way. Bora stood, her face calm but her eyes blazing. You want to lock us away because we've been lucky? Because we haven't suffered like you have? It's not about luck, the Veltron ambassador said quietly. It's about survival. You don't know what it means to lose everything. To watch your world burn and know there's nothing you can do. We're trying to protect you from that pain. By imprisoning us? Bora shot back. We may not have your experience, but we have something you seem to have lost. Hope that things can be better. The meeting ended without agreement. The aliens would vote on the quarantine proposal in 1 week. Humanity had 7 days to decide their future. Back on the Eternal Dawn, Deho called his senior officers together. Opinions? He asked. We should investigate the barrier, Hyejin said immediately. If we can understand how it works, maybe we can repair it. Or at least learn from it. And if we can't repair it? Jiwan asked. Then we learn how to survive without it, Deho said firmly. Set course for the barrier's edge. We're not accepting any quarantine. If the galaxy thinks we're too naive to survive, we'll prove them wrong. The Eternal Dawn turned away from the alien assembly and headed toward the mysterious barrier that had protected Earth for so long. As they approached it, their instruments went crazy. Energy readings spiked. Strange signals filled their communications arrays. Then suddenly everything went quiet. The main view screen flickered to life, showing text in every human language simultaneously. The message was simple but chilling. Custodians, your trial begins. Before anyone could react, the barrier pulsed with light. Information flooded into their computers. Data about its construction, its purpose, and most importantly, its creators. An ancient civilization called the Architects had built this barrier billions of years ago. They had chosen one random world to protect, to see what would grow there without the galaxy's violence. Earth had been that world. Humanity was the result of that experiment. But the Architects were gone now and their creation was dying. The barrier could not be repaired or restored. It would fall, and when it did, Earth would face the same chaos that had shaped every other civilization in the galaxy, unless humanity could prove they were ready. The message continued. 3 tests will come, survive them, and you will earn your place among the stars. Fail, and you will face the universe unprepared. Deho stared at the screen, his mind racing. They had come out here looking for answers. They had found them. But the truth was more terrifying than any question. Earth had no catastrophes because someone had made sure of it. Now the protection was ending, and humanity would have to learn very quickly how to survive in a galaxy that showed no mercy. Send a message to Earth, Deho said quietly. Tell them everything. Tell them to prepare. The safe times are over. The news hit Earth like a thunderbolt. Within hours of receiving the Eternal Dawn's message, every news channel on the planet was broadcasting the same impossible truth. Humanity had been living in a bubble, and that bubble was about to burst. Panic spread through major cities. Stock markets crashed. Some people refused to believe it, calling it an elaborate hoax. Others began building bunkers and hoarding supplies. Religious leaders declared it the end times. Scientists scrambled to verify the data. Captain Deho Kang returned to Earth 3 weeks later to find his homeworld in chaos. He stood before the United Earth Council, the governing body that represented all nations, and delivered his full report. The barrier will fail completely in approximately 10 years, he told them. But before that happens, the entity controlling it, what the Architects called the primordial network, will test us. 3 catastrophes will be allowed through. If we survive, we prove we're ready for the real galaxy. If we fail, he let the silence finish his sentence. What kind of catastrophes? Asked the council chair, her voice tight. Dr. Hyejin Nam stepped forward. Based on what we've seen in other systems, it could be anything. Asteroid impacts and solar flares nearby supernovae. The galaxy has many ways to kill a planet. When will the first test come? Another council member asked. We don't know, Deho admitted. It could be tomorrow. It could be a year from now. In fact, they learned the answer 6 months later. Observatory stations on Mars detected it first, a massive comet previously held at bay by the barrier, now heading straight for Earth. It was 10 kilometers wide and moving fast. Impact would come in 18 months. The comet would hit with enough force to throw so much dust into the atmosphere that the sun would be blocked for years. Temperatures would plummet. Crops would fail. Billions would die even if they survived the initial impact. Engineer Ji-won Choi was put in charge of the defense program. She worked 20-hour days, coordinating teams of scientists and engineers from every nation. The solution was simple in concept, but incredibly difficult in execution. They had to intercept the comet and break it apart before it got close to Earth. The problem was that humanity had never built weapons powerful enough to destroy something that large. They had never needed to. Every factory on Earth was converted to produce parts for the interception fleet. Thousands of nuclear warheads were manufactured and mounted on rockets. Giant railguns were constructed in orbit, designed to fire projectiles at incredible speeds. Lieutenant Minho Park was given command of the interception fleet. At 28, he was young for such responsibility, but Daeho trusted him. Minho had proven himself on the Eternal Dawn, staying calm under pressure and thinking quickly when situations went wrong. Remember, Ji-won told Minho before the fleet launched, you need to break the comet into small enough pieces that they'll burn up in the atmosphere. If you leave anything bigger than a car, people will die. I understand, Minho said quietly. The fleet launched on schedule. 40 ships carrying humanity's hopes. They met the comet 3 million kilometers from Earth, far enough that debris wouldn't be a problem, but close enough that there was no room for error. The battle was nothing like the movies. There were no dramatic dogfights or heroic speeches. The ships simply positioned themselves around the comet and fired everything they had. Nuclear explosions lit up the darkness. Railgun projectiles slammed into ice and rock at thousands of kilometers per second. The comet began to break apart, chunks flying off in every direction, but it wasn't enough. The core remained intact. We need to get closer, Minho told his fleet. All ships move in. We're going to fire point blank. Sir, at that range the debris will destroy us, one of his officers warned. I know, Minho said, but if we don't, Earth dies. All ships acknowledge orders. One by one, his captains confirmed. They all knew what it meant. The fleet moved in until they were practically touching the comet. Then they fired their remaining weapons simultaneously. The explosion was massive, visible from Earth as a new star appearing in the sky. When the light faded, the comet was gone, shattered into millions of pieces, each small enough to burn up harmlessly in the atmosphere, but so was most of the fleet. Only 7 ships made it back. 33 had been destroyed by debris. Minho's ship was among the survivors, though barely. Half his crew was dead, and the ship itself was held together more by prayer than engineering. When he returned to Earth, he was hailed as a hero. Parades were held. Medals were given, but Minho barely spoke at the ceremonies. He kept thinking about the 8,000 people who hadn't come home. Daeho found him sitting alone in his quarters one night, staring at nothing. We won, Daeho said gently. Did we? Minho asked. 8,000 dead, Captain. 8,000 people who had families, friends, dreams. And for what? To pass a test we never asked to take? To save 8 billion, Daeho replied. I know it doesn't make the loss easier. But those people died so the rest of humanity could live. That means something. Minho nodded slowly, but the pain in his eyes didn't fade. The celebration on Earth lasted 3 days. People danced in the streets, grateful to be alive. Politicians gave speeches about human courage and ingenuity. The United Earth Council declared it a new holiday, but Hyejin wasn't celebrating. She spent those 3 days running calculations, checking and rechecking her data. On the 4th day, she called an emergency meeting with Daeho and the council. The second test has already started, she said without preamble. The room fell silent. What do you mean? The council chair demanded. Hyejin pulled up a star chart on the main screen. This is Betelgeuse, a red supergiant star about 600 light-years from Earth. According to my readings, it went supernova 3 weeks ago. 600 light-years is too far to hurt us, someone said. Normally, yes, Hyejin agreed, but this wasn't a normal supernova. The star's poles were aimed almost directly at Earth when it exploded. That means we're in the path of its gamma-ray burst, someone gasped. Gamma-ray bursts were the most powerful explosions in the universe. Aside from the Big Bang itself, a direct hit could strip away Earth's atmosphere and sterilize the surface. When will it reach us? Daeho asked, his voice steady despite the fear in his chest. That's the only good news, Hyejin said. Light takes time to travel. The burst won't arrive for another 577 years. Relief flooded the room. 500 years was a long time. Surely they could figure something out. But Hyejin shook her head. You don't understand. The primordial network is accelerating it. According to my readings, the burst will reach Earth in 8 years, not 500. The relief died. Can we shield against it? Jiwon asked. No, Hyejin said flatly. A gamma-ray burst carries more energy than our sun will produce in its entire lifetime. There's no shield that could stop it. Then what do we do? The council chair whispered. Hyejin took a deep breath. We move Earth. Everyone stared at her. You want to move an entire planet? Someone said incredulously. It's the only way, Hyejin insisted. The gamma-ray burst travels in a straight line. If we can shift Earth's orbit by even 1 astronomical unit, we'll be out of its path. That's impossible, Jiwon said, but she didn't sound certain, is it? Hyejin challenged. We just destroyed a 10-kilometer comet. A year ago, that would have been impossible too. We can do this. We have to do this. Daeho looked around the room at the shocked, frightened faces. Then he stood. She's right, he said. We have no choice. Engineer Choi, you're in charge of Project Exodus. You have 8 years to move a planet. Make it happen. Jiwon swallowed hard. Yes, sir, the meeting ended. As people filed out, Daeho caught Hyejin's arm. Tell me honestly, he said quietly. Can we really do this? Hyejin met his eyes. I don't know. But I know that if we don't try, everyone dies. So we're going to try with everything we have. 8 years. They had 8 years to do the impossible. And this time there would be no close call, no narrow victory. They would either succeed completely, or they would fail completely. There was no middle ground when it came to moving a planet. Project Exodus became the largest undertaking in human history. Every nation contributed. Every resource was redirected. The goal was simple but terrifying. Build engines powerful enough to push an entire planet. Engineer Jiwon Choi barely slept during those first months. Her team calculated that they would need to build 15,000 massive fusion engines, each one the size of a city. These engines would be positioned around Earth's equator, all firing in the same direction to gradually shift the planet's orbit. The problem was fuel. To move a planet, you needed more energy than humanity had ever produced in its entire existence. The only sources big enough were Jupiter and Saturn, the solar system's gas giants. We're going to mine them, Jiwon announced at a council meeting. We'll extract hydrogen and helium, process it into fusion fuel, and transport it to Earth. That will take years, someone protested. We have years, Jiwon replied. Barely, which is why we start today. Construction began immediately. Giant platforms were built in Jupiter's upper atmosphere, scooping up gas and converting it into fuel. Transport ships ran constant routes between the gas giants and Earth. The engines themselves rose from the ground like metal mountains, visible from space. But not everyone supported the project. Some nations argued that the resources should be used to build generation ships, vessels that could carry a fraction of humanity to other stars. At least then, some people would survive. Others whispered that they should accept help from the Velthrons, who had offered to evacuate a few million humans before the gamma-ray burst arrived. The cost would be Earth itself, and humanity would become subjects of an alien empire. But they would live. Ambassador Borayi dealt with these factions every day. She negotiated, argued, and occasionally threatened. Her message was always the same. We stand together or we fall apart. There is no middle ground. Then, 5 years into the project, Captain Daeho discovered something disturbing. Intelligence reports showed that someone was sabotaging construction sites. Equipment would malfunction at critical moments. Fuel shipments would go missing. Workers would find their tools damaged. The investigation led to a shocking conclusion. The Velthrons were funding resistance groups on Earth. They were trying to make the project fail. Daeho confronted the Velthron ambassador over a secure communication channel. Why, he demanded. Why are you trying to kill us? The alien was silent for a long moment. Then it said, We are trying to save you. You don't understand what you're doing. Moving a planet will tear it apart. The earthquakes, the volcanic eruptions, the changes to weather and ocean currents. Billions will die even if you succeed. We offer a clean evacuation, a chance for some of your people to survive. Some of our people, Daeho repeated coldly, while the rest die. and those who evacuate become your servants. Not servants. Protected, guided. You are children playing with forces you don't understand. Then we'll learn, Deho said. But we'll do it on our own terms. Stop the sabotage, or we'll consider it an act of war. The sabotage stopped after that, but the damage was done. Project Exodus was 6 months behind schedule, and they didn't have 6 months to spare. With 2 years remaining, Ji-Wan made a desperate decision. They would fire the engines before they were fully tested. It was risky. If the engines malfunctioned, they could tear Earth apart instead of moving it. But there was no other choice. The colonies on Mars and Titan had to be evacuated. The engines would disrupt the entire solar system, making those worlds temporarily uninhabitable. Lieutenant Minho Park, promoted now to commander, led the evacuation fleets. It should have been a simple operation. But simple was a luxury humanity no longer had. The Mars colony had 2 million people. They had to be transported to orbital stations around Earth, where they would wait out the planet move in safety. But there weren't enough ships. There would never be enough ships. Minho made the hardest choice of his life. He prioritized children, doctors, engineers, people who would be essential for rebuilding. Others were left behind with enough supplies to last a few years, and a promise that they would be retrieved once Earth was safe. It was a promise he knew might be impossible to keep. The day the engines fired, every human on Earth felt it. The ground shook. Buildings swayed. Alarms blared as tectonic plates shifted. Volcanoes that had been dormant for centuries suddenly erupted. Dr. Hyejin Nam monitored the data from a command center deep underground. Her screens showed a planet in agony. Earthquakes measured at 8.0 and higher struck every continent. Tsunamis wiped out coastal cities. The atmosphere roiled with storms larger than anything in recorded history. "We're breaking Earth," someone whispered. "We're saving it," Hyejin corrected, though her voice shook. "Keep the engines firing. We have to reach the target orbit." The engines burned for 3 months straight. It was the longest 3 months in human history. Each day brought new disasters. Entire cities were swallowed by the Earth. Others were buried under volcanic ash. The death toll climbed into the billions. But slowly, impossibly, Earth began to move. On the 91st day, Hyejin checked her calculations for the 100th time. Then she picked up the communicator with trembling hands. "All stations prepare to shut down engines," she announced. "We've reached the target orbit. We're clear of the gamma-ray burst path." The engines went silent. Earth continued its new journey around the sun, slightly farther out than before. The planet would be cooler now. Seasons would last longer, but it would survive. The cost was staggering. 3 billion people dead, entire ecosystems destroyed, cities reduced to rubble. Earth's surface looked like something from a nightmare, scarred, broken, barely recognizable. But 5 billion people still lived, and they had done something no other species in galactic history had ever accomplished. They had moved their homeworld to safety. Captain Deho walked through the ruins of what had once been Tokyo. The city where he had been born was gone, replaced by rubble and ash. He found the street where his childhood home had stood, but there was nothing left to mark it. Ambassador Bora Yi found him there. "The Velthrons have sent a message," she said quietly. "They're withdrawing their opposition. They say we've proven ourselves." "At what cost?" Deho asked, not looking at her. "The cost of survival," Bora replied. "They understand now. Every species that survives in this galaxy has paid a similar price. We're not special. We're just finally normal." Deho turned to her. "Is that what we wanted? To be normal?" "No," Bora said. "But it's what we needed. We were children before, protected and naive. Now we understand what the galaxy really is, and that understanding will make us stronger." 2 weeks later, they received a message from the Ikari remnant, the nomadic species that had watched humanity's struggle with interest. They wanted to meet. Deho, Hyejin, and Bora took a shuttle to the Ikari flagship. The aliens looked almost human, except for their silver skin and eyes that seemed to hold ancient sadness. "You have passed the second test," the Ikari leader said, "but we must warn you. The third test is different. The first 2 tests challenged your technology and determination. The third will challenge your very nature." "What do you mean?" Hyejin asked. The Ikari leader looked at her with those ancient eyes. "A dark matter anomaly is drifting through the galaxy. It will reach Earth in 14 months. When it passes through your world, you will be changed. Every species that has encountered these anomalies has either vanished or become something else. Can we avoid it? Tejo asked, though he already knew the answer. No, the Ikari leader said. It is too large, too fast. You cannot run from it. You can only endure it. What happens when it passes through? Bora asked. The Ikari leader shook his head. We do not know. No one has ever studied an anomaly and survived to report their findings. We can tell you only this. The anomaly does not destroy in the way you understand. It transforms. What you are when you enter may not be what you are when you emerge. The meeting ended soon after. As they returned to their shuttle, Hyejin turned to Daiho. What do we tell Earth? She asked. Daiho thought for a moment. The truth. We tell them we just moved a planet to survive. Now we have to face something even stranger, and we tell them that if we've come this far we can go further. But as their shuttle flew back to the scarred surface of Earth, Daiho wondered if that was true. They had survived the first 2 tests by fighting, by using their technology and determination to overcome physical threats. But how did you fight something that changed what you were? How did you prepare for a threat that you couldn't even understand? He didn't have answers. He only knew that in 14 months they would find out. The dark matter anomaly approached like a storm made of invisible wind. Humanity couldn't see it coming, not really. Their instruments detected gravitational distortions and strange energy readings, but the anomaly itself remained beyond human perception. Dr. Hyejin Nam spent months trying to understand what they were facing. Dark matter made up most of the universe, yet no one had ever directly observed it. It only revealed itself through its gravitational effects on normal matter. Now somehow a massive cloud of it was drifting through space and Earth was in its path. What will it do to us? Captain Daiho asked during one of their daily briefings. I don't know, Hyejin admitted. Dark matter doesn't interact with normal matter the way we understand. It passes through solid objects like they're not even there. But this anomaly is different. It's concentrated, dense. When it passes through Earth, something will happen. I just don't know what. Multiple alien civilizations offered to help, or rather to evacuate humanity before the anomaly arrived. The Velthron sent ships. The Ikari remnant prepared habitats. Even species that humans had never met before reached out with rescue offers. The condition was always the same. Leave Earth permanently and accept protection under alien rule. Ambassador Bora, you spent weeks in negotiations. We thank you for your offers, she told the assembled alien representatives. But we have come too far to abandon our home now. We will face this challenge as we faced the others. You don't understand, the Veltron ambassador said. The previous tests were survivable because they were physical. You could fight a comet. You could move your planet. But this is different. The anomaly doesn't destroy, it changes. Species that enter it don't come out the same. Some don't come out at all. Then we'll be the first to understand it, Daiho said. He had joined the negotiations specifically for this moment. We're not running. Not from this. Not from anything. But he also wasn't stupid. He proposed sending an expedition into the anomaly before it reached Earth. If they could understand what it did, maybe they could prepare. Maybe they could even find a way to protect humanity. Engineer Ji-won Choi designed special ships for the mission. They were equipped with every sensor humanity had developed, wrapped in experimental shielding that might offer some protection against dark matter interactions. Commander Minho Park volunteered to lead the expedition immediately. I've been in the Vanguard twice now, he said. Third time's the charm, right? Daiho wanted to refuse. He'd already lost too many people under his command. But Minho was the best they had, and this mission was too important for anyone else. Come back, Daiho said simply. I'll try, Minho replied. Hyejin joined the expedition as chief scientist. She had to see this with her own eyes. She had to understand. The fleet of 5 ships launched 3 weeks before the anomaly would reach Earth. They flew toward it, toward something they couldn't even properly see, guided only by gravitational readings and faith. When they reached the anomaly's edge, everything changed. Time became fluid. Minutes stretched into hours, or maybe hours compressed into seconds. Hyejin couldn't tell anymore. The ship's chronometers showed different readings on every screen. Reality itself seemed to bend. Walls became transparent, then solid again. Crew members reported seeing double, triple images of each other. Some aged years in moments, then reverted back to their original age. All ships. Report status, Minho called over the communication system. The responses came back distorted, as if traveling through layers of reality. Ship 3 was gone, not destroyed, just gone. Ship 4 reported that they could see Earth, but it looked different, wrong somehow. Hyejin strapped herself into her seat and focused on her instruments. Through the chaos, she began to see patterns. The anomaly wasn't random. It was responding to them. "Commander," she called out, "the anomaly is conscious, or at least it responds to consciousness. Every time we observe it, it changes. That's impossible," someone said. "Is it?" Hyejin asked. "What if dark matter isn't just matter? What if it's something more? A substrate for consciousness itself?" She pushed deeper into the anomaly, following her hypothesis. The ship's sensors went crazy, but through the noise, she found something. A signal, a pattern, something that almost felt like communication. And then suddenly she understood. The architects, the ancient civilization that had built the barrier around Earth, they weren't dead. They had transcended. They had merged their consciousness with dark matter, becoming part of the universe's hidden structure. This anomaly wasn't a random cloud. It was them. It was what they had become. "I'm detecting something," Hyejin said, her voice shaking. "A message. Or maybe a memory. It's showing me—" The choice images flooded her mind. She saw the architects as they had been, beings of flesh and blood, not unlike humans. She saw them building the barrier, protecting Earth not out of kindness but as an experiment. They wanted to see what would happen if one world was spared the galaxy's violence. But then she saw their decision. They had reached a point where they could either stay physical or ascend, merge with dark matter and become something greater, something eternal. They chose ascension, and now they were offering humanity the same choice. "Commander," Hyejin said urgently, "the anomaly, the architects, they're giving us an option. We can transcend like they did. Merge our consciousness with dark matter. We'd gain incredible knowledge, see the universe as it truly is. But we'd lose our physical forms. We'd lose Earth." Minho was silent for a long moment. "What's the alternative?" "We stay physical and let the anomaly pass through us. We'll be changed, I can feel that much. But we'll still be human. Still be ourselves. What kind of changes?" "I don't know," Hyejin admitted. "The architects themselves don't know. No species has ever chosen to endure the anomaly rather than transcend or flee." Minho thought about his crew, about the billions of people on Earth waiting for his report. Then he thought about what it meant to be human, to feel sunshine on your face, to taste food, to hold someone you loved. "We endure," he said. "We stay human. Send the message to Captain Kang. Tell him we choose to face the anomaly, not run from it or transform into something else. We survive as what we are." The expedition fleet turned back toward Earth. They had their answer, even if they didn't know what it would mean. When they emerged from the anomaly, they found that only hours had passed for Earth, though it felt like weeks to the crew. Minho and Hyejin reported their findings to Daeho and the United Earth Council. "So our choice is to stop being human or face unknown consequences," the council chair said. "Yes," Daeho confirmed. "But I believe Commander Park made the right call. We didn't come this far to abandon what we are. If the tests were meant to prove our worth, then staying true to ourselves is the greatest proof we can offer." The vote was unanimous. Humanity would endure the anomaly as themselves. 3 days later, the anomaly reached Earth. It passed through the planet like a ghost passing through a wall. For 3 days, reality twisted and changed. People reported strange visions, feelings of connection to things they couldn't explain. The sun looked different. The stars seemed closer. And then it was over. The anomaly passed beyond Earth and continued its journey through the galaxy. For a moment, nothing seemed different. People looked at their hands, touched their faces, checked that they were still solid, still real. Then slowly they began to notice the changes. Hyejin was the first to understand. She was running tests when she realized she could perceive something that had been invisible before. Dark matter. She could sense it, feel it, almost touch it. The invisible framework of the universe was suddenly visible to her. Reports came in from across Earth. Everyone had gained the same ability. Humanity could now perceive and interact with dark matter. They could sense gravitational fields, detect approaching threats that would have been invisible before, even manipulate dark matter in small ways. But the cost was real. 10% of Earth's population didn't survive the transition. Their bodies couldn't handle the change. Entire communities mourned their dead even as they marveled at their new abilities. Deho stood at a memorial service, watching names scroll past on a massive screen. So many dead, but so many more alive, changed, evolved. Bora approached him quietly. The primordial network has sent a final message. It says the trial is complete. We passed. At what cost? Deho asked, echoing his question from months before. The cost of becoming who we needed to be, Bora replied. We're not the naive species we were when we left Earth's barrier. We're survivors now. Changed, yes, but stronger for it, Deho nodded slowly. The galaxy had tested humanity 3 times. Each test had cost them dearly. But they had passed. They had survived. Now came the hardest part, figuring out what to do next. The galaxy watched humanity with new eyes. Word spread quickly about what had happened to Earth, how humans had chosen to endure the dark matter anomaly rather than flee or transcend. No species in recorded history had made that choice, and no species had ever survived it with their physical forms intact. But humanity had. Changed, yes, but still fundamentally human. They could perceive dark matter now, sense gravitational fields, detect cosmic threats decades before they arrived. It was as if they had gained a 6th sense, one that let them see the universe's hidden architecture. Engineer Jiwan Choi was the first to realize the practical implications. With their new perception, humans could manipulate dark matter in ways that had been impossible before. She designed engines that used dark matter interactions for propulsion, making space travel faster and more efficient. She created shields that could detect and deflect cosmic threats automatically. Within months, humanity had leapfrogged centuries of technological development. They built ships that could cross the galaxy in weeks instead of years. They established warning systems that could predict supernovae and gamma-ray bursts decades in advance. The Veltron Collective was the first to reach out. Their ambassador appeared on a screen in the United Earth Council chambers, its crystalline form shimmering with what might have been respect. We were wrong about you, the Veltron said simply. We thought catastrophe would break you. Instead, it forged you into something remarkable. We wish to withdraw our quarantine proposal and request an alliance instead. Ambassador Bora Yi handled the negotiations. She had learned much during humanity's trials, and she knew that this moment would define Earth's relationship with the galaxy for generations to come. We accept your friendship, she told the Veltron. But understand this, we will never be subjects. We will never bow to another species. We offer cooperation, partnership, shared knowledge. But we remain free, the Veltron agreed. They had seen what humanity could endure. They didn't want to be enemies with a species that stubborn. Other species followed. Within a year, Earth had formal relationships with dozens of civilizations. Some were friendly. Others were cautious. But all of them respected humanity's resilience. Then the Ikari remnant revealed their true purpose. Their flagship arrived at Earth, and their leader requested a private meeting with Captain Deho, Dr. Heejin, and Ambassador Bora. They met in a small conference room aboard the Eternal Dawn. The Ikari leader looked at them with those ancient, sad eyes. We have been waiting for you, the alien said. For thousands of years we have watched the barrier around Earth, wondering if the architect's experiment would succeed, wondering if a sheltered species could learn to survive when the protection ended. You were testing us too, Hyejin realized. The Ikari leader nodded. Our people lost our homeworld long ago. We survived, but at great cost. We became hard fatalistic. We accepted catastrophe as inevitable, but you refused to accept it. You fought against it. You proved that suffering doesn't have to lead to despair. What do you want from us? Deho asked carefully. Partnership, the Ikari leader said. We propose creating a coalition, species that help younger civilizations survive their first catastrophes. You have the technology now, the ability to detect threats before they strike, the knowledge of how to endure the worst the universe can throw at you. Share that knowledge. Help others survive. Bora looked at Deho. He thought about the 8,000 who died stopping the comet, the 3 billion lost when Earth moved, the countless others who hadn't survived the anomaly. All that sacrifice would mean something if they could save others from the same fate. We accept, Deho said. The Resilience Coalition was born that day. It started small, just humanity and the Ikari. But others joined quickly. Species that had survived their own catastrophes and wanted to help others do the same. Species that were tired of accepting disaster as inevitable. Dr. Hyejin became the coalition's chief scientist. She established the Institute for Cosmic Resilience on Earth. where scientists from dozens of species work together to understand and predict catastrophic events. Commander Minho, now promoted to admiral, commanded the coalition's defense fleets. He trained officers from multiple species in rapid response tactics, teaching them everything humanity had learned through its trials. G1's dark matter technology was shared freely with coalition members. Within years, dozens of worlds had early warning systems. Hundreds of potential catastrophes were detected and prevented. Ambassador Bora became the coalition's diplomatic face, negotiating with governments and calming fears. She was good at her job, finding common ground between species that had nothing in common except a desire to survive. Earth itself transformed. The scars from moving the planet slowly healed. Cities were rebuilt, though they looked different now. Humanity had learned from their mistakes, building with catastrophe in mind. Every structure was designed to withstand earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, massive storms. The barrier that had protected Earth for billions of years was completely gone now. But humanity no longer needed it. They had learned to protect themselves. 3 years after the anomaly passed through Earth, the coalition received its first real test. A distress signal came from a species humanity had never met before, the Thalari, an aquatic civilization living on a water world called Ceres Prime. Their sun was dying prematurely, expanding into a red giant centuries ahead of schedule. They had no way to escape, no technology to save themselves. They were sending out desperate pleas to anyone who might hear, knowing that no one would reach them in time. The Coalition Council met to discuss the situation. Some members argued that it was already too late. The Thalari sun would consume their world in less than a year. Others said the distance was too great, the resources too stretched. Ambassador Bora stood before the council. When humanity faced extinction, no one helped us. We had to save ourselves. But we survived because someone, the architects, gave us a chance billions of years ago. Now we have the power to give another species that same chance. If we don't use it, what was the point of everything we suffered? The council voted to help the Thalari. It wouldn't be easy. They would have to move an entire civilization to a new world, transport billions of aquatic beings across light years of space. But humanity had moved a planet. This was just the next impossible thing. Admiral Minho led the rescue fleet personally. They arrived at Ceres Prime with 8 months to spare. The planet's oceans were already starting to boil as the sun expanded. The Thalari were in a panic, their cities collapsing as water levels dropped. It took every ship the coalition had. Every transport vessel, every cargo hauler, every civilian craft that could be spared. They evacuated the Thalari in waves, moving billions of beings to a new world that coalition scientists had identified. A water planet in a stable star system, perfect for aquatic life. They finished with 3 days to spare. As the last transport left Ceres Prime, Minho watched from his flagship as the dying sun consumed the planet that had been home to the Thalari for millions of years. But the Thalari survived. All of them. And they would remember that humanity and the coalition gave them a second chance. Captain Deho retired soon after. He had led humanity through its darkest hours and saw it emerge stronger. Now it was time for younger officers to take command. He returned to Earth, to the ruins of Tokyo where he had been born. The city was being rebuilt. Not as it had been, but as something new. Something that acknowledged what had been lost but looked forward to what could be built. A monument stood in the city center now, a massive wall inscribed with names. Every person who had died during humanity's trials. 8,000 who stopped the comet. 3 billion lost when Earth moved. The millions who didn't survive the anomaly. Their names would be remembered forever. Deho stood before the monument one evening watching the sun set over the rebuilt city. The sky looked different now. His enhanced perception let him see gravitational waves, dark matter streams, the invisible structure of space itself. Ambassador Bora found him there. She stood beside him silently for a moment, then spoke. "Do you ever wonder what the architects would think of us?" she asked. Deho considered the question. "I think they would be surprised. They protected us for billions of years, expecting us to become something special because we never faced hardship. Instead, we became special because we learned how to face it. We're not the same species that left the barrier," Bora said. "No," Deho agreed. "We're better. We understand now what the rest of the galaxy has always known. that survival requires sacrifice. But we also understand something they had forgotten, that sacrifice should lead to growth, not just survival. We don't just endure catastrophes. We learn from them. We help others face them. He turned to face her. Earth had no catastrophes because someone decided to protect us. Now we protect others. That's our purpose. That's why we went through all of this. Bora smiled. The Velthrans call us the Hope Bringers now. Did you know that? I didn't, Deho said. But it fits, darkening sky. Stars that were no longer distant and mysterious, but neighbors waiting to be known. Each one a potential home to species that might need help someday. Species that the Resilience Coalition would be there to save. The barrier was gone. Earth faced the same dangers as every other world in the galaxy.